Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host Armando Venditti, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day wherever you are. Here in Edmonton, it's warm and sunny, and I hope wherever you guys are, you're safe, you're looking after yourselves and one another, and I hope you enjoy this episode. In this installment of the Music Den, I'm going to be doing another episode of albums that turned 50 in 2023. Now, in thinking of this episode, I was trying to think of a band that I haven't not mentioned yet on the channel. And then it hit me, there is a band that I have not talked about yet, and an album that they released that I have not mentioned. The band is Steely Dan, and the album is Countdown to Ecstasy. Now, Steely Dan were formed in New York City in the early 70s by two friends, Donald Fagen and Walter Becker. Now, they wanted to form, I guess you could say, a rock band, but that had also jazz influences, jazz fusion influences. They signed a deal with ABC Dunhill Records. ABC Dunhill would eventually be bought out by MCA in 1979. ABC Dunhill also signed groups such as Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers in 76 or 75, I should say. Steely Dan released their debut album, Can't Buy a Thrill, in 1972. The band at that point consisted of Donald Fagen on lead vocals and keyboards, David Palmer on lead vocals, Walter Becker on bass and assorted instruments, Jeff Skunk Baxter on guitars, various guitars, Denny Diaz on guitars, and Jim Hodder on drums. David Palmer would leave after Can't Buy a Thrill was released, and I believe the subsequent tour, which would leave Donald Fagen to assume all the lead vocal duties on the future albums. Countdown to Ecstasy, I should backtrack a little bit. Can't Buy a Thrill had the two singles, Reeling in the Years and Do It Again. Well, by the way, Reeling in the Years is one of my favorite Steely Dan tracks. It always has been. Countdown to Ecstasy was released in July of 73. It reached number 35 in the charts. And both albums were produced by Gary Katz, and I do believe he would work with them until the mid-70s. Countdown to Ecstasy does continue in the vein of Can't Buy a Thrill. Can't Buy a Thrill also had the one track I forgot to mention, Dirty Work, which featured David Palmer on lead vocals, which is another good track on the album. I don't know why it wasn't released on as a single. I do believe it was played on FM radio. It still is played on FM radio to this day. But getting back to Countdown to Ecstasy, it reached number 35 in the charts. It had two singles that reached the top 60s in the charts, which were Showbiz Kids and My Old School. I was going to say Can't Buy a Thrill. What the hell? Countdown to Ecstasy, excuse me, continued in the vein of rock mixed with jazz fusion influences. I mean, you could never say that Steely Dan were a hard rock band in the classic sense of, like, say, Zeppelin or the other bands at the time, Floyd or Black Sabbath. You could never, or even Queen, you could never say that they were a hard rock band. They mixed elements of rock, jazz, and jazz fusion, pop all together. and did so beautifully. I mean, and it's got to be said, uh, Steely Dan, along with their contemporaries, came out at a time where record companies and management left their bands on their rosters alone to basically do whatever the hell they wanted to do in the studio. And Steely Dan, to me, were never a band that were, um, I guess you could say, preoccupied with having hits. They basically just wanted to release their type of music and wanted it to be accepted by the general public. And being left alone to your own devices. I mean, it's got to be said. Um, these bands that were signed at the time basically had 4 or 5 album record contracts. So you had a couple of albums under your belt to be able to basically hone your craft and develop your songwriting and develop a style and basically pick whatever genre you were going to fit into, whether it be rock, pop, jazz fusion, R&B. The good thing with Steely Dan is they were a mixed bag of everything. And again, ABC, Dunhill, in their wisdom at the time, left them alone to do whatever the hell they wanted to do. So they had those couple of albums to basically find their way and hone in their craft and work on their music. And they basically released albums from 72 to 77 and took a bit of a break and then released Gaucho in the 80s and then took an extended break. Around 75, after releasing Katie Lies, they basically got rid of the backing band. I don't want to say backing band, but got rid of the band and leaving the two main members, Donald Fagen and Walter Becker, to use studio musicians to fill in on the subsequent recordings. And they basically wanted to use the top-notch musicians of the time. Other notable musicians that were in Steely Dan at one point or another were Jeff Porcaro, who on drums, who went on to help form Toto in the late 70s, and Michael McDonald, who, along with Jeff Skunk Baxter, would go on to be in the Doobie Brothers. And it's got to be said that, just a bit of a backtrack here, it is got to be noted that Walter Becker and Donald Fagen were basically considered perfectionists in the studio. They, whether it be a backing track or a vocal track, they would have you do said pieces of work until they felt that it was right, even though you felt that maybe you were treading over, old ground again in terms of repeating a bass track or a guitar track or a drum track. They knew what they were looking for from the work that they wanted to do. So it wasn't unusual to say have Michael McDonald, who sang background vocals on Peg from Asia, to sing a certain vocal phrase over and over again, like say 5 or 6 or 7 times, until Fagen and Becker felt that they got what they needed from that vocal take. So it's got to be said, But I'm going to be going into a bit of a description of Countdown to Ecstasy. And sorry for the shaking the camera. I banged my leg on the table here. Pardon me, guys. So the album is a mixed bag of styles. Again, it's not heavy rock. There are a lot of I've only had one coffee today, guys. A lot of jazz leanings on this album. The album starts off with Bodhisattva, and I hope I say that name right because I never could get that name right. And I mean, right off the bat, you're talking about a track that is basically a ragtime jazz arrangement. Fantastic twin lead guitars on it. there's a section where there's a good call and response soloing section between keyboards and guitars. So this one track, 5 minutes and change, it is one of the more, I guess you'd say, experimental tracks, because they allow the musicians to go off and do whatever the hell they want to do with regards to soloing. And it does have that kind of jazz feel to it. It is a jazz track. I mean, let's be honest. And it's catchy. It's got the hooks. And I don't even know who the hell Bodhisattva is, like in terms of who they're talking about, but it is a great track. Next up is Razor Boy, which Jeff Skunk Baxter plays pedal steel guitar on this album, and he does fantastic work. His twin guitar work with Danny Diaz, amazing, just bloody amazing. I mean, these two work really well together. It's just a little side note. It's beyond me why they would get rid of the band. I mean, it was also said that Walter Becker and Donald Fagen did not want to concentrate on touring. They wanted to concentrate on studio work, which also, I guess, pissed off the rest of the band, which in turn got rid of the band and continued on basically as a duo. All right. Continuing on with the Countdown to Ecstasy, the Boston Rag is track 3, and it's basically a mid-tempo number. Beautiful arrangements, great guitar soloing on that track, and it's basically talks about wanting a certain newspaper to be brought back into circulation. Basically, it's talking about yearning for the old days. It's a track about nostalgia, right? And I mean, these tracks, all of them talk about society issues, like looking around society and seeing what you don't like and what you miss about the old days and what could be improved on current events in terms of society as a whole, right? Next track is Your Gold Teeth, which ends off side 1, right? It's a very laid back track, and again, very good soloing on the album as a whole, but also on this track in particular. Showbiz Kids starts off side 2, and again, this was a single from the album, the first single, and it only reached, I believe, number 61 in the charts. So it really wasn't a hit, as like a top 10 hit for the band. But the track itself, I mean, the commentary of the track, basically it's a commentary on the lifestyles of the privileged, and how when you are privileged, you tend to forget how it is for other people who don't have what you have, who aren't as fortunate as you. But these individuals are talking about, I can only imagine they're talking about the Hollywood set, people in California who are, live in affluent families, etc. How they basically forget that they could very well be on the other side of that coin, where you are struggling to pay your bills and make ends meet and have food on your table and food in your fridge. So, and thing is, in this track, I think, they're talking about people who are privileged and really don't care that there are others out there that are suffering. It can also double as as talking about, be careful for what you wish for, because it could very well come true, and then your problems really do start. But again, that's just my take. Track 6 is My Old School, and again, fantastic guitar work on this track. Um, what can I say about it? I mean, it's very, again, a beautiful mid-tempo piece of work, mid-tempo track. Um, a lot of these tracks, aside from Bodhisattva, um, the lead-off track, a lot of these tracks are very basically mid-tempo tracks. They're not fast-paced, they're not heavy. There's no heavy drums, heavy guitar work. There's a lot of twin guitar work and call and answer with regards to soloing between guitars, between Denny Diaz and uh, Jeff Baxter, and also between the guitarist and the keyboard player, uh, obviously Donald Fagen. But they're not, the tracks overall are not overly heavy. So there is that jazz influence on the album. Here you have the next track, track 7, Pearl of the Quarter. Again, I'm sorry for the camera bouncing. What to say about this track? A lot. The fantastic slide guitar work from Jeff Baxter. It can also, I mean, the slide guitar use on this album, on this track in particular, it also almost gives it a country vibe on this track. And basically, Pearl of the Quarter is talking about an escort that this guy met in New Orleans and in the French Quarter, and fell for her, and he's telling her, go and do what you're going to do. I will be here when you get back. There will always be a home for you. There will always be a place for you, and also a place for you in my heart, no matter what you do. My love for you is steady, is unfallible, and it will endure. So, I mean, that's a bit of a heavy statement to make, but again, it's a fantastic song. I think this should have been released as a single myself. Subject matter notwithstanding. I mean, back in the 70s, of course, I don't think that ABC Dunhill would have released this as a single. But I think that it's a fantastic piece of work. It's a beautiful written track. It's beautifully arranged. The pedal steel guitar does give it a country feel, and I think it's wonderful. And the album ends with King of the World. There's a funky guitar intro along with the bass drum coming in, and I mean, the only other notable thing about the track is that it's fantastic keyboard solos on it, and it fades out. I mean, there's nothing really that is, outstanding overall of the song. I think maybe had they done a bit of a switch and put Pearl of the Quarter as the last track, because it does come to it comes basically to a stop with the pedal steel guitar. I think that would have been a better sequence, but that's just me. So yeah, overall, this album for me, it's a good album. It's an album that you can put on, if you have people over, you have company over, dinner party, whatever. You put this on, have it playing in the background, not overly loud, but you don't need it loud. And you can just have it coming through, the sound music coming through the speakers, in the room, and it's basically just a very, very comfortable album musically, not overly heavy. I don't want to say the term fits like a glove in terms of listening to it, but I guess you could say that it's like a meeting a friend for a coffee and just sitting and talking, and it's like a long lost friend that you haven't seen in a while. You meet for coffee, sit and chat, and enjoy each other's company for the afternoon or for the evening. That is what this album means to me. That's what it represents. And it's got to be said, my opinion. Along with the other big albums of 73, you've got Dark Side of the Moon, you have Tubular Bells, Houses of the Holy. This album deserves a mention as well. It may not be big and bombastic and with heavy keyboard overlays and stuff, but it deserves a mention and it deserves a respect. So this is why I mentioned it, and hopefully you'll go out, you'll listen to it, you can stream it on YouTube, and please, down below, down there, leave your opinions. Let me know what you think of the album. Do you like Steely Dan? Do you not like Steely Dan? Do you like Donald Fagen's vocal style? Do you not like Donald Fagen's vocal style? Just let me know what you think, and yeah. So please click like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content that I've got coming up. I'm going to be doing maybe another video today. I'm going to try and get out because it is a nice, beautiful day. So hopefully you guys are looking after yourselves and one another. And if you're not, please do that, because, we only have one life to live. And as long as you can live a happy, good life and look after yourselves and treat each other with respect, love, and dignity, that's all I can ask. And that's all anybody can ask for. So that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and we will chat soon. Bye for now.